can all be confident that they'll be able to bring this under fundamental control, which then means we don't have to do things like borders.
What about cars though, coming across the border? Like you get checking trucks at nil, but that's only one spot and it's only commercial.
Well, no, that's one. It's the most popular route in terms of commercial vehicles. This is an abundance of caution approach. We would urge again. Anyone who's planning to travel from South Australia to Victoria, don't do it unless it's absolutely urgent. Absolutely urgent. That is just the responsible thing to do. I don't want to have to close the border, but I don't rule that out. And if we see people who are travelling as if there hadn't been an outbreak that they're dealing with now, if they're not, paying attention to the fundamental reality that they confront as a city and a state, well then we'll take the appropriate action. But that's not what's needed now. The most important thing is to deal with the vast majority of people, those who are travelling by air, those who travel in the bubble, so who live either side of the border. They're not really our concern. It's more people that have come from Adelaide, and we're doing everything we can to try and test them, as well as discouraging anybody from Adelaide who doesn't really need to come here from coming here. Now, will that be here for a month? It may only be a few days, or a week or so. We'll just have to wait and see how things unfold.
Yesterday, DHHS tweeted that those arriving from Adelaide, they were being asked to get tested, and if they weren't getting tested, being asked to isolate at home for 14 days.
Yes.
You're discouraging Adelaideans to stay home if they don't have an urgent reason to travel to Melbourne.
Yes.
I guess given what we know about human behaviour and what we've discovered sort of about people being, untruthful to contact tracers as well, is it appropriate to be trusting people to do the right thing?
Well, look, the vast majority of people are in fact truthful. There'll be examples, and sometimes they're particularly important examples when you look at chains of transmission and the history of the transmission of this virus. But I think we can be a little more positive than that. I don't want your bulletins tonight to be, Victorian Premier threatens to slam the border shut. But what I'm saying to you is, if that is the advice I get from health experts, that is exactly what I will do. And that's not a newsflash. It's not a big bolt from the blue. That's what other states did to us, and we'll do it to protect the unique position that all Victorians have built. But at the same time, we offer our support, not just closing borders. We offer our support. We'll do whatever we can to help our friends over there in Adelaide. They're going through a very difficult time at the moment. We wish them well. If they do well in containing this outbreak, every Australian does well. I wouldn't get to the point of being so distrustful of people that they won't listen to their Premier in South Australia and me here in Victoria. There's no need to be travelling to South Australia unless you absolutely have to. Now is not the time to be doing that. Adelaide is the main issue. That's where these cases are from. Let's hope that they can keep a lid on those cases and we don't see this thing get out of control. That's in everybody's interest.
Will people refusing tests become a reason to close the borders if that continually happens?
Well, anybody who refuses a test, if you're a truck driver, for instance, who refuses a test, you'll be sent back. If you're an arrival at Melbourne Airport and you refuse a test, then there'll be a public health order made where you have to stay in your house for 14 days. There is no reason to refuse a test. Testing is what's got us this amazing run of 0 days and every likelihood that we can have a COVID normal Christmas and a COVID safe 2021. Testing is critical, and getting tested as soon as you've got symptoms. No one who's got symptoms should be travelling, regardless of the mode of travel either, just to be clear. The only thing to do if you've got symptoms is to get tested, and get tested that day. So look, this is fluid. We just have to watch it. We have to work very closely with our South Australian friends. We will. And if I've got changes to announce, then of course we will do that. This is not a big announcement. I made the same points I think on Monday. If we have nothing's off the table, but it is not appropriate in the view of our public health team at the moment for us to have to close that border. But we have put these additional measures in place, and they reflect, in fact, they're identical to measures that New South Wales have put in place, because Martin Foley and Brad Hazzard are speaking multiple times a day, so that our settings are as closely aligned as possible.
On the tennis,
yes.
International tennis media have been reporting this morning specifically that tennis players won't be granted entry to Australia at any time in December. Have you heard that from the Commonwealth?
Oh, look, as far as visas, that is a matter for the Commonwealth. Whether they need to be here in December is the other issue, James. I don't know that necessarily means that there isn't an Australian Open.
The view there seemed to be that if they couldn't get in earlier and then quarantine and then play at least one lead-up event, then it might not be worth their while coming to the Open.
Well, again, I'm not a professional tennis player, nor am I a spokesperson for them. But I think Grand Slam tennis has a certain allure, and I don't think will ever have trouble getting a field for one of just 4 Grand Slam tournaments that are played each year. We're working very hard to make sure that we've got as much tennis as we can safely have, but it's got to be done safely. And so I wouldn't read anything into those reports, or I certainly wouldn't conclude from that the Australian Open is not going to happen. Whether there are lead-in tournaments, that's to be worked through, and that's why I said Monday's reporting was not accurate, and that's why today I'm reconfirming for you that we've got a lot of work to do, and we're committed to doing that. And when we've got more to say, we will.
Are you aware about whether or not that's correct? That sort of December ban?
No, I don't know that there's necessarily that it's. I wouldn't put it in those terms. There's a ban or anything like that. We'll work with the Commonwealth Government around a whole range of major events, whether it's the cricket on Boxing Day, the Grand Prix a bit later on into 2021, Australian Open tennis in between, and many other smaller events. And they won't just be here; they'll be in lots of other parts of the country. Everybody wants to find that safe COVID normal, and major events are a big part of that. Not just for the audience that's in attendance, but for global TV audiences as well. There's a lot riding on these things, but again, they have to be done safe. And I wish I could give you every single answer to every question today, but there's still work that has to be done around that. But I wouldn't read too much into those reports.
Given the number of people who want to make it home for Christmas, though, do you think that Australians trying to get home for Christmas should be prioritised in December over international?
Well, they will be.
Players?
They will be.
And is that the issue?
No, they will be prioritised, because we will have announcements to make fairly soon about a reset quarantine program. And once that's done, we'll be able to receive flights again. There'll be caps. It's not going to be literally thousands of people arriving every day. It has to be managed very carefully, and it will be. I was in quite lengthy meetings for pretty much all of yesterday on these very issues, Lundy. We'll have some announcements to make soon, and then flights will be able to start to come back. My priority is to get permanent residents and Australian citizens from Victoria who want to get back to be with their family for Christmas. They are my priority. That's the National Cabinet agreement. I don't think that is incompatible with having major events in the early part of the new year.
Do you consider considering abolishing stamp duty like New South Wales in the budget?
I've got no announcements to make about tax policy today. They've made some announcements. I've got no announcements to make about tax policy today. There'll be significant tax breaks, if you like. There'll be significant support via the tax system for business. But I'll leave the Treasurer to make those announcements on budget day.
Getting back to the border.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Getting back to the border issue, there's understandably a lot of anxiety and apprehension for those cross-border communities. I know you sort of spoke about it earlier, but are you able to expand on what considerations will be made for them?
South Australia.
South Australia border. Yeah.
Oh, look, I think that at this stage, given the public health challenge that is essentially an Adelaide challenge, there'll be no impact to that border bubble that we have operating now. I think it's 9 communities up and down that border who all have benefited from the common sense arrangements that we put in place. It took us a while to get the South Australians and all of us to get to an agreement, but we got there, and I think that served us well. There are many people who might live in Victoria, but they go and buy their fuel and their groceries and other things. Their community of interest goes across that border. I don't see those arrangements changing now. Look, it is hard though. If things were to become much worse, then of course, as I said before, we can't take anything off the table. But we're a long way from that. And it would seem, and if we can play a part in assisting, we are ready to do that. It would seem that the public health response is bringing this under fundamental control, and that's exactly what we need.
When it comes to the New South Wales border closure,
I'll come to that. Yes.
when it comes to the New South Wales border closure, Victoria's now had 19 days of no coronavirus cases. Has your government been putting any pressure on Gladys Berejiklian to open the border earlier, given how long our border communities have suffered for?
No, I don't think it's a matter of putting on pressure. She's made an announcement, and I believe that the virus conditions and the preconditions for opening in both Victoria and New South Wales will mean that we can hit that important deadline, and I think that's a very, very good outcome. Not just for border communities who have been hit hard by this, and I've got some lived experience of having grown up not far from the border. We know how it really does affect people's day-to-day lives, but it has served a purpose in keeping all of us safe. But as we've said all along, it wouldn't be there forever, wouldn't be closed forever, and very soon it'll be open. which I think is a wonderful outcome.
You're back in the northeast today. Are you going to go visit your mum?
I am, yes. I'm going to go and see her. Well, I certainly hope so. I'm looking forward to seeing her. Now, I spoke to her last night and let her know told her that I'd be up here today. It's been a long time. I think the last time we saw each other was the day before Christmas Eve. So it's been a very, very long time. I'm looking forward to seeing her soon.
In next week's budget, will there be reforms to the state tax base? I know you mentioned there'd be significant tax breaks and also, I guess, incentives for businesses. But would you reform the tax base?
Well, what justifies reform and what doesn't is a matter for the beholder, I would have thought. But I'll leave it to the Treasurer to make announcements about the budget. We're announcing some very important policies ahead of the budget. So social housing, biggest boost of its kind anywhere in the country's history. Regional tourism boost today, the biggest that our state's ever seen, and I think it could be held up pretty favourably to any boost in any other state.